Mancino, and I'm doing my thesis on in the world of reality television. I definitely want to echo your sentiments as well. Thank you, Professor Seaman and Kolba, my advisor at Ingebretson, and all of you guys for helping us guide our process. Also, I have a lot of interview subjects that I'd like to thank. I was able to talk to two participants on 2 seasons each of Survivor, a field producer on Survivor, the producer of Real Housewives of Atlanta, Lily Hughes, and Skip Lane gave an academic and more theoretical approach. I was also able to talk to the director of development at a huge production house and a pretty famous reality TV blogger. So it's been really awesome, the amount of access, and kind of just fun on my part being involved in this. So my thesis, I'm going to argue that the representation of the fourth wall in serialized reality television has been affected by the increased concentration on and fascination with ordinary celebrity in the age of social networking. So that's a lot of words and terms there, which will be explained throughout my project, and a lot of you guys have heard this already, but we can go through a little bit what's going on. The fourth wall, as we know it, it's kind of comes from the old sitcom days of 3 walls on a sitcom set. The fourth wall was the audience. There's always rumors that Desi Arnaz made it for Lucille because she always performed better in front of an audience. And there's all that kind of old history when it comes to that. And that's always been applied then when it comes to film and television in general as it's been evolved through different genres. The idea of ordinary celebrity is really important here. It's something that we get closer and closer, more and more in our age now, and I'm going to talk about later in this presentation. So my motivation in this comes from 3 different perspectives. There's the fan perspective. I actually really love reality television. I think it's very interesting sociologically and just entertaining-wise. From academic and theoretical perspective, I think it's really fun looking at this really heavy theory and applying it to Pauly B. As Kolba likes to always say, she'd love to see some really intense theory on the side of Pauly B fist pumping in a club, which would be really interesting, and kind of what my process has been like. And also from a future standpoint, I'd love to be involved in production and producing reality television. So what I kind of like to do then within my project was mirror my own methodology, my own motivation. So I've kind of taken this from 3 different perspectives and tried to incorporate that into the presentation itself. What you'll notice is that producers of reality television are normally not fans of reality television. They talk very badly about their talent and their stars. The mainstream media and critics tried to kill reality television when it first came out because it was taking jobs away from actual actors and real celebrities. So a lot of these voices are really in opposition to each other, and it's kind of interesting to now try to find the medium between them, which is kind of where my take is coming from. So when I first started this, I kind of had embedded my hypothesis into my question, and then it turned out that my hypothesis was wrong. So I kind of refocused it after a while. In the beginning, the way I came about this was I started seeing a difference between old school reality television in the modern sense, like we're starting with Survivor here in 2000, and how reality television is produced now. As far as the fourth wall, we get a lot more, a little bit of breaks, a little bit of a look at the camera, a little bit more of an acknowledgement that they're aware they're on camera, they understand the social impacts that's going on, and the narrative is starting to be influenced by things that are going on outside the actual text of the series itself. So that's kind of what I was studying, and through my studies, kind of started figuring out that there was an actual root cause of this break. But I'm going to start off. I brought a few clips of me that I've edited, and so let's start off with the opening. People have called it the modern freak show. They compare it to morbid curiosity passing a car wreck, and others say it's an affirmation that we're not as fucked up as the people on the screens. Regardless of the reason, reality television has captivated the country. Its effects are embedded in our culture. And so far, it's shown no signs of stopping. that intro, you can see the way my method is going here and the way my style is going to be. The idea here is to use the form to critique the form, and so it's kind of set up in the sense of a reality television show in and of itself. If you look at the beginning, it's kind of the previously on, the way I look at it, what happened last time in reality television, and then we have our main credits. Those are three of my interview subjects, and I'll have them for the rest of my subjects as well. So yeah, that highlights the method, and also my title, which as of now is the Untitled Reality Television Thesis, a documentary. It kind of brings to light, the whole what this process is, and the engagement that I have with the participants and the form itself, which is what reality television kind of is and what my thesis is getting at. So one of the important things to realize here, I think, is that when you're writing a paper, you have a very significant voice. If I was to narrate this, I could easily use my own voice in it. But reality television doesn't do that, really. There's very few shows that will have a narrator telling you what to do and what to think. And so for this study, I've used the voices of the participants that have been guided through very careful questions and careful editing on my part, and very much kind of setting up what I need to accomplish here while still getting academic integrity, as it were. So let's look at the clip number 2 I brought. And this is going to be right after the main credits on the opening of the documentary.
From this tiny Malaysian fishing village, these 16 Americans are beginning the adventure of a lifetime.
I cannot wait to get to Jersey Shore.
This summer, everyone goes to the shore.
Getting a Jersey Shore house is wild.
They have volunteered to be marooned for 39 days on mysterious warning island.
That's when the shirts come off and the bikinis come out, and that's where you want to be.
Their house is 6 to 10 people.
It's crazy. You have strangers living with you the whole summer.
This is their story. This is survival.
Weirdos everywhere, hot girls, and hot music.
Want to get into the house, want to meet some girls, want to meet some guys, want to see what's going on. Ready to go.
You are witnessing 16 Americans begin an adventure that will forever change their lives.
They're not performers or artists. So the beauty of the success of a show like that is you want to always feel like these people are regular. You always want to feel like you're a viewer who's kind of getting a behind-the-scenes look into a regular person's life.
So that's the intro. As you can see there, I'm kind of trying to look at these 2 case studies that I'm doing of Survivor and Jersey Shore and kind of compare and contrast them. One of the important things to realize with both of these shows is you're taking ordinary people who you casted for and putting them in an unnormal circumstance. Desert on an island or like a house on the beach. Now, obviously, Jersey Shore takes more of the docu-soapy, this could be really happening without the cameras feel, but you're still taking people from all different parts of their life and forcing them to live in a house together, kind of real world style. So this kind of draws attention to the editing language in and of itself. We kind of have a monkey kind of making a similar face to JWoww in the hot tub. And we kind of see the parallels to both of these shows. It also kind of shows, that was the opening of the first season of Survivor and the first season of Jersey Shore. It's very starkly different. It shows the difference between a network and a cable show. It shows the difference between the year 2000 and the year 2009. And it also shows the difference between the age demographic of who they're trying to target here. So basically what all that is saying is the importance of the audience. The importance of the audience's participation and reception of each series. And so now I used Carlos King, who's the producer of Real Housewives, who talks about the ordinariness of these people and how important it is to continue keeping them as ordinary people. And one producer told me that reality television is basically what the human interest story on the news used to be. You kind of bring them and you're delving deeper and extrapolating that out. Reality TV in 2000 comes right after the democratization of radio shows using listeners' calls. We start seeing more historical accounts of ordinary people rather than the great men, the rulers that we used to see. We have best-selling, the New York Times bestseller list has more autobiographies and more importance on the self in this era. It's this whole idea of the voyeur and the whole idea of, you know, the person. And the internet at the same time is gaining ridiculous amount of attention as the, what one person said, the me of medium. It's really all about the self in this sense. But we also have to remember that it's still television. It still relies on the same conventions of television. And that's why we still use the fourth wall. And I'm using the fourth wall then as this gate into this study of ourselves and our ordinary celebrity. So now I'm going to put up another clip of...
So that fourth wall is extremely powerful in protecting us from the reality that actually exists, the reality of what it takes to produce that show.
Well, on a show like Survivor, they do use the helicopter a lot to get some of the amazing shots that they get on the show.
At challenges, there are maybe 75 people standing around behind the scenes, from camera operators to producers, dream team.
It's like a stage. It's all. Yeah, you see, like, there are tons of people watching.
But what it also manages to do is conceal the production.
Logo, first to shore. Shapiro, right on their tail.
You would think the audience would be totally comfortable seeing the camera there because you're selling them on the concept that it's reality television. Yet, they don't accept it.
Television wants you to forget the reality that something is being observed.
And when you break the fourth wall, for a second, you might let the viewer in on the fact that, oh no, this isn't real.
It goes back to the conventions of the media.
But that's all stuff that's for the viewer anyway.
So that kind of shows the idea of the fourth wall in hiding the actual production elements of the show and how important that is to reality television and really all programming in general. But as we move on, we start seeing this breaking of the fourth wall, and that's what the rest of the documentary really looks at, is we start acknowledging the fact that these people are on a television show on Survivor. They start talking about seeing each other on the show. In the early seasons, participants were told, don't talk about previous seasons, don't talk about the show. Newer seasons, we have the last 2 weeks actually on Survivor, season 26, we have people talking, literally saying, I used to wait every single week to Wednesday night to watch Survivor because I couldn't wait to be on that show when I was older. They're finally referencing themselves as a TV show and as participants, and it shows how Survivor has really adopted the audience and grown along with the audience. A field producer there told me, we will do anything that's entertaining, and we will find a way to make that entertaining to the audience. The Real Housewives of Atlanta producer acknowledged that, Nene Leakes became a huge celebrity, but so it became impossible to do the show with her not being a celebrity. So we backdoored it and said, she was really famous on Celebrity Apprentice, so now she'd be famous on the show. There's all these different ways the producers do tricks to make sure we can still keep these people as being famous, but not because of the show itself. So this is where the whole idea of the ordinary celebrity comes in. We have a switch from, in the past, putting random people or casted people in unnormal situations, and they became instant celebrities, ordinary celebrities. But now it's switched to the idea of a lasting ordinary celebrity. We came from the replaceable cast to the importance of a recurring cast. And that happens the most importantly in 2003 when a participant from Survivor, Jerry Manthe on season 2, is put on the surreal life in a house with someone like MC Hammer, Brandy Roderick, or Corey Feldman.
Know who she is, and she's not part of our society as we know it. I don't understand why she would be part of this group.
I was really disappointed because I really thought Robin Gibbons was going to be, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this. But now it's a girl that I've never heard of before. We're here.
So this is really important. It's kind of ridiculous for us to think now. It would be, how absurd is it that, a reality star's on another reality show? Yeah, no shit, that always happens, But in 2003, this had never happened before. And, after the surreal life, what happens is we have an all-star Survivor. We have Laguna Beach, which brings a bunch of ordinary kids, and then the second season brings them back as ordinary kids. it's not like Making the Band where you come back to second season and now they're celebrities. It's ordinary people living their ordinary lives. And then we go they follow all the way to the hills, and we just keep remembering that, no, they're not on the cover of Rolling Stone. They're not famous for being famous. They're just living their lives. And that's kind of the switch between 2003 and 2005. So we have this real life, and then we have Facebook launches, YouTube launches, TMZ launches. And suddenly this whole identification of the self is really important, which is why Jersey Shore, they come in with already branded selves. They come in as, Nicole Polizzi comes in as Snooki. Mike comes in as the situation. They already have these created personas because they understand the genre already. People are no longer coming to the show being, I'm going to be the villain, I'm going to be the black one, the gay one, the bitch. That's no longer what it is. I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to use that over multiple seasons. So that's where Jersey Shore really contrasts with Survivor. There's a breakdown in Jersey Shore. We kind of understand that there's people following them. We can see it on the show, and there's kind of this disconnect with the audience. The audience knows what's going on, and Jersey Shore tried to hide it, which I think why it had a more stunted growth than something like Survivor, which is able to refresh itself and evolve with the audience. Reality TV is TV. We always talk about that. So there's an idea though why more people are tweeting at Snooki and less people are tweeting at Jim from The Office. These people are in our real world, even while they're in this produced world. So the people formerly known as the audience are now part of the television world itself. Thank you. Any questions?
You call these people ordinary people, but I feel like people they cast really aren't ordinary people. Did you talk to people at all about casting of these characters?
Yeah, so I actually talked with one of someone who was, the participants obviously have gone through casting, and I'm talking right now with a CBS casting agent I haven't been able to connect with yet. But yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, they are ordinary in the sense that they are normal non-celebrities before they get on the show. Yeah, they're kind of crazy people, a lot of them. But in the sense that they're not ordinary, I mean, I don't know. I mean, are you talking because they have really major personalities and stuff?
Just
or?
because
They're crazy. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's fair. But so what one of the participants told me on Survivor was they go through the casting process and it's very clear from the beginning what role they want you to play. So you actually will go into the casting process, and then if you make it past the first round, you get notes, and they say, we really liked when you said this about your friend from home. We really like how you were, really mean here. We really like how you're definitely going to be the funny guy on the island. That's what your role is going to be, right? And that follows all the way through casting, all the way till the producers actually get to decide what wardrobe you wear when you go on Survivor. So the participant I talked to is a lawyer, but she dresses more like artsy. She doesn't dress in a suit every day, and she in her real life outside of work. And she kept sending them clothes and them saying, no, you're not. You don't look like a lawyer, no. And she's like, I'm not going to wear a suit like you saw me in casting. They're like, no, this is, act more like the lawyer that you are. Act more like this. And so that's kind of how they automatically start pinpointing into what you're going to be in that sense. So that's a little bit of the casting process.
But you mentioned how that's changed with the Jersey Shore people come on, they're I'm going to be my personality. Yeah. How has that changed the casting process?
Yeah, so a show like Survivor, they don't have the same, I guess, pop cultural phenomenon status that something like Jersey Shore or other docu-soaps have. And something I talked about is there's a difference between being isolated on an island and then for a season and then have a new series cast come in and replace you. They recur some of them on the show, which is what's interesting there. But with Snooki or JWoww and them, they're coming not only because they understand what they can be. They're coming in with Snooki has a shoe line. She has all these different things. JWoww came on because she wanted to get her fashion line launched. That's why she looked to reality TV. Reality TV is now a viable means of occupation there's actually studies now that show that kids think that that is like one of the occupations that they can go into. And why not? When you're a celebrity in your own life on Facebook, and when you're a celebrity in the own stuff you tweet and post, it really makes sense why that's how you're being seen.
I'm kind of interested why you chose Survivor as opposed to something like the real world, which seems like it would have been like a more direct comparison with the reality show.
Yeah, so Survivor is very much looked at as kind of reigniting, not reigniting, but really exploding the reality genre, quote unquote. Real World is in the vein of many other shows before it. 1970s had a show called The American Family, which looked into the lives of the family. So reality TV isn't new in 2000, but I'm looking at the years kind of 2000 till the present day because that's our modern day look at it. Also, the way the Real World was, because they have a new cast every single year and have never departed from that, it kind of doesn't show the evolution of the genre. The other thing as well is what Real World has always done is spun off into the show called The Challenge. So they've taken Real World and Road Rules people and put them on the show together. What's interesting in that aspect was MTV realized first we have characters that the audience likes, let's keep bringing them back. But they didn't think it was viable to put them in the same environment they once were. Survivor, in comparison, has taken the same people and brought them back on the same show, which is why it's kind of evolved and why it kind of spans the whole gap of the new modern era.
Have you noticed how television has, or the celebrity status has affected the participants themselves after the show and when they're not on TV? Because in my experience working with two television all-stars, I noticed how they act before and after TV.
Wait, what do you mean?
I mean, like DC Cupcakes, those girls. The reality, the DC Cupcakes girls.
Oh, yeah.
I see them off camera and notice similarities between. I was just wondering if you noticed anything.
Yeah, there's actually one of the things I'm looking at is people who come off the show and then wind up going back onto the show, and that reason is because they really want to change the way they were perceived. Jerry Manthe, who was on Surreal Life, was the biggest devil of all time on her season. She was the first real big, reality villain as a woman, and she comes back on in All Stars and tries to change that, but still comes off like a bitch, which is upsetting. She actually on the reunion show gets booed off the stage and leaves and has a really hard time. She comes back 10 years later on the show again and has kind of reformed herself and understood, what she can give the camera, what she can't, what she needs to do. So people are really aware of it. If you look at people who are on the Hills and people in Real Housewives, a lot of them call up the tabloids and tell them where they're going to be. They leak the stories about themselves. So yeah, I mean, people change, I guess, a lot. I think the thing with Survivor, a lot of them, because it's kind of most of the people on the show kind of don't come back. It's kind of I have this experience and then it's different. But in the old days too, I mean, people used to become famous from shows like that.
So have you noticed, because especially Survivor, Big Brother, the ones that started early were all competition based, you won something at the end? Have you noticed that this whole idea of being yourself, branding yourself, with Jersey Shore, has kind of, because I feel there are less competitions than there used to be. Reality TV was only competition shows, and now it's much more ordinary people. Is that part of the trend too?
Yes, the evolution is we have competition shows, formatted shows, and then we kind of go into this idea. Well, let's start with Fly in the Wall, right? We have Real World. You're just kind of, it's like a documentary. You're just watching it happen. No interaction at all, supposedly. Then the competitions come in. Then after that, celebrities start getting in the mix, when we have all these, retreads, all these 80 stars who now want to make more money and they realize they can use their previous fame to get on the show. So this idea of celebrity-reality came out, which VH1 kind of branded themselves as the celebrity-reality channel. So that's kind of what started it all. What wound up happening then is these ordinary people who were on these competition shows suddenly became celebrities enough that they could have their own type of celebrity-reality. And so that's kind of the way it changed. And that's why it's changed more from a competition to a docu-soap, as they call it. The interesting thing, though, is if you look at network television has still yet to produce a docusoap. They still rely on formatted shows. Even something like Kitchen Nightmares, which is technically, not like a competition show, you still have the first act that he's going to come in and say, this place is awful. The second act where he's going to change it. The third act where the people aren't going to like his changes. And the fourth act where everything's great in the end. It's very formatted in those ways on networks because they don't want to take the economic risk on something like a Duck Dynasty or a Deadliest Catch, where at the end of a certain amount of time you might not have enough.
I have a bit of a flippant question, but it's a serious one.
Okay.
Has your research frightened you?
Has it what?
Frightened you.
In what way?
I'm serious in that you talked about how this is a hyper self-centered culture. You said that even the social media aspect of people living in their real lives has spawned the success of a lot of these docu-soaps, and Zach's comments about people before and after, and your comments about people calling up tabloids, changing the focus of their lives, but it being a larger societal issue. I'm just saying because I was frightened.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it's frightened.
No, a lot of people are frightened by it, and a lot of people, talk about, it's the end of times. Like,
Well, I
know, but
it scares me in that is this the priority of our generation?
yeah,
Well, and should these ordinary people be
Yeah.
celebrities? Like, celebrities used to do something important, and now it's like...
They used to have a talent.
Right.
Some would say their talent is, being themselves, and that's a great thing to tell your kids. But yeah, no, I think it can get really depressing and really negative, and especially when you see other clips, the way the producers talk about these these stars, these people who are famous, they really look at these people as really scummy people, really. And so it is kind of interesting in that aspect. I'm not frightened by it, but yeah, it's really can get sad.
I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on something as you've done all this research. I work in a restaurant back home, and one of the waitresses I work with had filmed a pilot that they were trying to get picked up, and it was going to be called Love in Your 30s, and it was just her and her friends, and her perspective was nobody wants to watch these things that are so fake and so staged. People want to watch real people, and the show is going to be me and my friends, we all work 3 jobs, and it's just us having barbecues and going to work and going on dates. Do you think that there is room for that in this?
Maybe. I would say no. If you look at, I think that's a very cultural thing, and Lily and I actually talked about this. And I think it'd be really interesting to do a look at American reality television compared to English reality television, or the UK, because it's very, very different. And if you look at Big Brother in the States, the first season did the same thing that England did, and it was you took people in a house and you put them in there and you just watched them. And then the audience voted them out, and then someone won money at the end. There was no competitions, nothing like that. If you look at Big Brother now, there's 3 competitions a week. They vote themselves. The audience is a little bit part of it, but not really. I think from an American standpoint, just watching people live, not as exciting. If you look at more the real aspect, hands off, don't let the producers interact. I think that's interesting, except that The Bachelor is still thriving. It just had a ratings uptick this season, so it's kind of people think that that's what they want. I think that when the shows come on that actually look like that, they seem much more boring, especially in comparison to scripted shows, which is what they're still competing with. Personally, John.
Have you seen, and this is something I've always been curious about with reality television, have you seen anything about the outcomes in certain shows, or a good progression of this, where the outcome in certain shows are planned in advance, or certain interactions are scripted, or people are told to wear certain things, but told to have this interaction with this person, it's going to be great for the audience.
It's very, very scripted in that sense. I worked on a show last summer where before we went out to shoot the show, I had a treatment of this character is going to talk to this character, we're going to find this in the house, this is going to happen. It's all scripted ahead of time, mostly. Survivor's one of the shows that doesn't do that as much. They got a lot of flack the first season because they did do that. They were really worried about it not becoming a hit, so they kind of, when they started seeing the same pattern of people being voted out every time, where it was becoming really easy and really like predictable, they started kind of talking to people, well, don't you think, like, what if you did this, or what if you thought of this? And that's kind of what happened in the first season. They got a huge amount of flack for it. Mainstream media really wanted to like kill reality television, like I said, and so it was like a huge scandal. Now, if you have something like The Hills, I've had producers say that literally when the girls would be talking to each other, producers would be texting them what to say on camera, and that's why their phones are out on the table. I had the Real Housewives of Atlanta person say, what we do is we set it up and we say, listen, you and whoever are going to have a conversation today, and this is what we want you to talk about. And they go in. There's a reason why these shows look so beautiful, and there's still like the shot, reverse shot, the whole conventions of television. And the editing plays a huge part of that as well. One of the producer of Real Housewives said, a lot of times the girls will start screaming, saying, like, I saw what you said about me all last season, and they like break them up and say, listen, you can't say that because you're not supposed to be on TV. Go back down and find another reason to fight, basically.
It's like when they're like showing nothing and they put up subtitles and you can like kind of hear it, but you can totally tell that it was recorded at another place and another time. But you think she said that in that moment.
But yeah, it's very staged, and if you look at even like something like Survivor, which has the reward challenge, immunity challenge, tribal council, it still is very much a format that they're kind of following, which kind of thing.
I know early on when you were sort of mapping this out, you were playing with the idea of the wall between one's public life and private life disintegrating, and reality television is sort of a macro version of what's happening in everyone's life with Facebook and. So if this is first, do you think that you're onto something? Is that hypothesis still working? And reality television is really just mirroring back what everyone in this generation is dealing with, where you have a brand that's online and your life is public and you're constantly manipulating it and changing it. And if so, what are the broader implications for American society and our workforce and where this is headed? And I mean, I don't know if this is the scary thing you were picking up on, but what does that mean, just getting out of the TV component, the public-private thing for everyone?
Well, yeah, I think it's really interesting. A lot of studies are talking about how, I have a Facebook, I have a LinkedIn. I act very differently on a LinkedIn and a Facebook. I think personally, though, people talk about this, how like, we all have these different personalities and different lives, and we can like construct our own identities in different spheres. I think that was always happening. I think it's just easier to see now. I mean, if I'm 40 years ago, if I was going out with my friends, not going to say the same stuff I would at work. I think now that it's gone online, it's more public and much more easy to see. But I think it was already happening. I do think reality television and the social networking are very interlinked and kind of feed off each other and form each other. That's like a study I would love to do, or like on a much bigger scale. But yeah, I don't know the implications moving forward. I don't know. I think that there are a lot of people who will do anything to become famous, and that's definitely kind of troubling in some senses. But at the same time, I think we've always kind of been a celebrity-obsessed culture, and that's why you have people like like the Black Dahlia or people like that in old times that it was the same kind of idea. I think now we just have such an easier way to get to it. So I guess that's what I would say. I don't know what the broader implications would be later on, but that's what I see now.
I was going to ask what you learned or how your research impacted how you made your film, because I noticed a couple of the interviews looked like the confession booth style.
Yeah.
I was wondering sort of how your process evolved based on your research.
Yeah, so a lot of the processing, based on my research, I guess, I kind of looked at, how are reality television interviews kind of done. I've talked to people about like what kind of questions are asked. I've seen them asked like on set and like just transcribing things. And when I was transcribing last summer, I would have someone say, do you think that this guy, or do you think that like it was a show called Toy Hunter, and they're like, do you think that they're gonna get a lot of money for this toy? And she's like, I don't really know. It's not really that valuable, I don't think. She's like, but do you think you could possibly get it? And the person's like, maybe. Like, I would hope so. I'm like, okay, well, maybe you should just say it like that. And the person says it. kind of using the same technique in a lot of situations. I really am. And it's interesting because it's funny when I look at the producers and I look at the participants that I've looked at. If you look at the producers of reality TV, I can kind of tee them off and kind of get them to where I want them to do, and then they'll kind of do their own thing. Participants, I had one of the guys literally say to me, wait, so where are you going with this? And I said, well, you know, I wanted to look at how The Surreal Life took Jerry Manthe out, and it was like a controversy, and after that it became, you know, like a level playing field for ordinary people. And that he's like, all right, so what's that kind of like? What do you mean by that? And I would say it a little bit bigger, and then he kind of gave it right back to me. Is that in academic integrity? I think so. That's the research says it. The research says it. But I think, again, it's the form following. It's something that I wouldn't do in a paper. I think it's very different. And because you'd have to see a bunch of ellipses everywhere. Here, the form is following the function, I guess, or the form's critiquing the form. So yeah, I've definitely incorporated that a lot.
Joe, thank you.